It's so nice to have all of you here. Wish we could be in person, but I'm glad you could join us. Sometimes it's a lot more convenient doing this way through technology. But today I'm going to talk about where they are is where you should be. Patience, perseverance, and possibilities on Alzheimer's care. You know, the image is meeting hand in hand. We talk a lot about meeting our loved ones who are affected by Alzheimer's disease or other dementias. We talk a lot about meeting their reality, but let's go a little further today. And how do we really are there for them? Where they are is how we can place ourselves with them. First, I want to get started and just give a round of applause to all those of you who are caregivers who are affected by Alzheimer's disease or dementias. Just take a moment to give yourself a hand. I know these lunch and learns are very valuable for you as far as meandering the disease. And they're here for your information and to learn new skills. But I always like to stop and say, thank you for what you do. You're appreciated, even though sometimes you don't feel that way. So give yourself a great applause. And I hope today you'll find some pearls of wisdom that'll help you meet your loved one or the person that's affected in your life, meet them where they are. So one of the first things we can do is develop patience. And if you're anything like my grandson, every time I say, you have to have a little patience, he said, patience is hard. So, you know, we've heard a lot about, yes, get into their reality, the person that's affected, live in their present moment. We hear that over and over, but that's a lot easier said than done. And it really wears on our nerves and causes stress. So developing patience, and patience can be a developed skill. We can, through, stepping back, and I'll go over a few steps of how we can develop patience. And we can learn to develop those skills so our journey will be a little bit easier. But it's more than just meeting in their reality. It's about connecting, because everything we do with our affected individuals, those loved ones with the disease, everything is relational. It's about connecting. So it takes a lot of practice and learning patience. So how do we develop patience? Well, I'd like to go over 4 steps that might help you start. Slow down, think, choose, and surrender. Slow down, I mean by start with your breathing. Everybody take a deep breath in. Let it out. How many times a day throughout the day do you really do that? We really need to take a time during the day and do those heavy breathing. It's to help us refocus mentally. And so we need to create times like this where we're not only paying attention to our breathing, but we're slowing down so that will reduce our stress. And this pays dividend, in accordance with our patience, developing patience, and our calmness. Also, take time out when you encounter difficulty. Maybe you just need to pause, step back in a moment. Maybe your loved one there's a behavioral expression. Maybe there's been so many repetitive questions that you cannot think straight. So take time out, step back, and look at the things more objectively. Also, meditating and these deep breathing relaxation tips, there's so much for your well-being and your state of your physical body, because it releases endorphins that help you calm down. There are a lot of meditation, I'm sure, techniques and breathing techniques you can find on the internet. But I just want to remind you, when we say to slow down, we create that time to breathe, take a time out, and really assess where you are and what is productive, what is not productive. Let it go. We'll talk about that in a minute. The next step is think. Oh, we are so ruled by our thoughts. We can really, really do a number on ourselves when we start our thoughts go all haywire. But the key to managing and developing patience is to manage our emotions and use thoughts to manage these. Look at the big picture. What is true? What is really true? What is happening between you and your loved one right now? Can you say to yourself, I've dealt with this before, I can do it again? avoid thinking in dichotomies like, oh, this is so bad, or this is all good, or this is all right, or this is all bad. Most situations in our lives fall in that gray area. So it's a combination of positive and negatives. And so for most situations in life, there's more than one way to solve it. So think about the thoughts, think about, the big picture again. And then use the word, we'll talk about in a minute, empathy. Really choose to empathize with the other person. It's an important skill in learning and developing patience. Ask yourself, well, what would I do if I were in their shoes? What would be happening to me? How would I feel? Try to get into the other person's experience. Using our thoughts and getting the big picture can help us, and also carrying in that empathy with the other person can put ourselves in that person's where they are. I wonder how they're feeling with this. I wonder, in that way we can get down on their level, get into there again, meet them where they are. The next step is choose. We all have a choice to be patient. So another word is be intentional. It requires a certain type of self-talk. We have to tell ourselves, okay, I'm going to step back. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to relax. I'm going to adjust my expectations and just be patient. So it takes a lot of self-talk. And this takes a while to do, because 70% of our self-talk is negative. So we really need to turn that around to a positive. Self-talk is a critical aspect of thinking because we choose our thoughts. So when we choose our thoughts, it changes our brain chemistry, and it really adjusts our whole central nervous system, and it decreases that release of adrenaline. So again, look back at the big picture and choose. How are you going to feel? If you're going to I'm going to choose to harp on this one particular difficulty, then you'll always stay in that reality, that negative reality. So try to choose, areas, look for areas that are good, that are blessings. And that way you can cultivate an attitude of gratitude. And in turn, it'll create a little more patient skill. Someone once told me she likes to think of life full instead of life less. We so often use the word lifeless in so many ways instead of life being full. So when you come to understand that it's a choice, and choosing is intentional to become patient, then you come to understand also what does trigger your impatience. What are the things that the caregiver is doing or the loved one is doing that trigger impatience on both parts, and how can we choose and decipher that and see how what are the areas we can focus that are good. The last step is surrender. There's many things that we cannot control, and one of them right up there is we cannot control the disease or the disease progression. And so, but we can control our own self-thoughts, that self-talk I'm talking about, and our action. Stress, worry, impatience, these are all going to have adverse effects on us physically and mentally. So when we surrender everything and try to put that in control of being a choice to surrender everything and not let it power over us, then our patience, it will become more easily to us. We won't become impatient as often. It'll garner respect from others. It'll make life more enjoyable. And it also make you feel a little more gentle on yourself, that, okay, this is what I'm becoming. I'm stepping back. I'm surrendering things that don't matter anymore. There's my son used to have a cat, don't sweat the small stuff. So put those things aside and really surrender the things that you cannot control. Believe it or not, there's research on patients. And so there's really benefit. Studies have shown that there's a lot of benefits of being a patient person. So, and really it goes back to the secret is in our thoughts and our self-talk. But developing the sense of patience can really make you feel a lot better and produce a lot better well-being and overall sense of health. For instance, it makes you a physically healthier person. If you're always full of stress and angry and frustrated and impatient, and that causes a lot of course, stress on your body, hypertension, high cholesterol, heart disease, ulcers. All these things can play havoc on your body. So being patient reduces overall stress levels, and there's less physical illness associated with. It also helps you develop a healthy attitude, being patient. You've heard the saying, good things come to those who wait. Patience allows us to persevere and make more productive decisions, and that leads to a greater success in the journey of Alzheimer's. When we're impatient or there's a lack of impatience, that results in us being unhappy or just focusing on the negative. And if we always focus on the negative, then that's going to be our reality. And that's going to be a place you really don't want to stay at, because you're working toward being this patient person, and you don't want to ruin your overall health by becoming impatient so often. Patient people have a greater sense of gratitude. As I said before, patience and gratitude really reinforce each other. Look to what was good. Not everything was bad today. Look to 3 things that were good with my loved one, or with caregiving. What was a blessing with the caregiving? And that goes along with the steps of slowing down, intentionally choosing to be patient, surrendering, and just thinking positive thoughts instead of that negative self-talk. And then patience really transforms relationships. If you can avoid becoming irritated and defensive all the time and saying hurtful feelings, then, you slow down that process of always being like uptight or stressed or impatient. So when you do this, you develop that crucial relationship piece called empathy, which we're going to talk about in a minute. You are focused out on outward things, on things that are coming to you, things that you can control, and you're able to choose and care with compassion for the other person. So those are research benefits of being a patient person. Perseverance, the ability to work through situations even when there are obstacles or challenges in the way. You certainly have lots of challenges in the journey of Alzheimer's disease. So patience and perseverance go hand in hand. How can we develop perseverance along with our skills of patience? Well, it's easy to say, just keep going. Well, yeah, that's real easy. Just persevere. But in what ways can I do that? What ways can I persevere? Well, first, let's try to accept and anticipate change. Instead of always fighting the inevitability of change, learn to just sit back and accept it. Again, there's things we cannot control. We just have to accept it. Embrace the change. You might discover something new. Life will get better. Resisting change will only fuel this negative energy and this negative self-talk that I'm talking about. And you'll generally feel discouraged about life, discouraged about caregiving. So when you demonstrate this acceptance of change, then you demonstrate perseverance. Even through your discouragement, accept the change. I'm going to accept this. It's something I can't control, and I'm going to move forward. And use your power of choice to liberate you. Again, that's word choose and choice. Be intentional about that. One of the few things, again, we have control over is our power of choice. And no one can take that away from you when they say, just keep going, you persevere. The choices you make are in your character and what you're facing. You can do nothing and allow whatever issue you're experiencing to distract you, to fester up and to become a bigger problem than it was before, or you can face the problem. Psychologist Carl Jung once said, what you resist will persist. And it really, really is true, because if it constantly persists on your mind or in your caregiving or what's happening with your loved one, then it's going to be this vicious circle, and it's moving you backward and not forward. So you'll be relieved when you have the power of choice. It liberates you and gives you that freedom to make a choice and to move forward. And again, give yourself an applause. It's a trial and error. No two persons with Alzheimer's disease are alike, so no two caregivers are alike. So if you think you've made a mistake or feel bad about your caregiving that day, make the choice next day, I'm going to get up and do better, or whatever. Give yourself that pat on the back. Never be afraid to ask for help and also accept help. It is not a sign of weakness to ask for help. In fact, those who ask for help are self-aware of their needs. They seek support and advice and encouragement from others who can lend it to them. So never be afraid to ask for help or accept help when something is offered. Number 4, be positive and laugh when you can. You always have to have that laughter in there. Laugh at yourself, laugh together. It enables you to, again, make your choices wisely, and it's intentional. When we laugh, we know we have a greater sense of well-being. There's a more positivity in our life. It helps us not to withdraw from things that we're experiencing. And if you've had a hard time cultivating a positive attitude, try things like mindfulness meditation or laughter yoga. There's lots of YouTube videos. Look through a joke book. Laughter is contagious, so get friends together and share those positive moments. Then embrace the unpredictability of life. Life is a wonderful, amazing journey full of painful experiences, full of beauty, full of joy. Running away from the challenges really is not the answer. As I said, they'll only fester up. So all those challenges will continue to follow you. As Carl Jung said, what you resist will persist. So again, as we accept and anticipate change, we also embrace that unpredictability of life. We never know what's going to happen. So we have to stay resilient. And that's, we persevere. We just keep going and accept that, yes, we're going to make mistakes. Yes, I might fall apart one day. Yes, I might have to call a friend because I'm so upset. Yes, I'm very depressed about my loved one's progression of the disease. But I'm embracing that right now. It is what it is. And I need to bounce forward and to make sure I meet my loved one and we share, a sense of that present moment and that laughter and joy together as to bring them the quality of life too. Focus on the things that bring you joy and bring your loved one joy. Joseph Campbell once said, "Find a place inside where there's joy, and the joy will burn out the pain." So in times when you just feel you just can't keep going, find that place inside of you where there's joy. Maybe it's an image of a particular vacation that you had, or a particular event that you celebrated with your loved one, or a photo that you like to look at. Think of that image and think about that joy that it brought you. So focus on that, and then focus on the things that bring your loved one joy and the things that bring both of you and your loved one joy together. Allow yourself not to be consumed by negativity, by the stress of the progression of the disease. You'll start to believe that there is nothing good in your life if everything is negative. So we want to make sure that doesn't become a reality. So focus on the things that bring you joy. And then don't let the past rule your present. Again, maybe some particular interventions with behaviors didn't work out. Maybe you didn't get to fix a hot supper for your loved one and they only ate a sandwich. Maybe, maybe you're trying to be too perfect, or your expectations are too high. Deal with these lessons that you've learned. Maybe you want to write them down, or what worked and what didn't, but don't let the past, rule your present. Make things work for you. The skills that work today may or may not work tomorrow, but move on. Look for opportunities for self-discovery. For the person with Alzheimer's or dementia, every action is meaningful. So look behind the disease and see, what are they really trying to say? What is meaningful for them? And then when you're facing those tough times, ask yourself the question, what is the one thing I can do right now that will bring me one step closer to moving forward, to getting out of this negative reality? What is one thing? Just think of one thing that will bring you, whether it's an image or a skill you've learned or something you've redirected to, maybe that could move you forward and not let you stay in that past. Don't make mistakes or past fears diminish your judgment or diminish your decisions about your loved ones, because that can really make you more fearful. It can ruin your self-esteem, and it can diminish your courage. So you are not defined by what happened in the past, what you did yesterday or the day before. Become courageous and empowered and resilient, and that's how you keep going. That's how you persevere. So what are the possibilities meeting your loved one where they are? Think about things differently. As I said, self-discovery. I talked a little bit a while ago about empathy. And of course, what do you mean by walking in another person's shoes? The first step of empathy is to imagine yourself in another person's shoes, to live their life through their unique experiences. So if you can imagine being in the shoes of someone who has a memory impairment and they're fearful and they're disoriented and they cannot communicate to us what they need. So it's being empathetic with that person and understanding what they're going through. So we have to hear and we have to listen. Are you listening or are you just hearing? You know, we hear sounds from our ears, but the process of listening is really paying attention to those sounds that are going on. Hearing is a passive, involuntary sensory process which we perceive sounds. For instance, right now, as you're listening to me, if you're at home or your office, you might hear sounds in the background, maybe a car passing by or a neighbor's dog or people laughing or a siren going. So those are sounds. Those are what we hear, and they're involuntary. So what is listening then? Listening is active, it's voluntary, it's intentional. So empathetic listening is that intentional. We're going to ask relevant questions. We're going to further understand our loved one's experience through this empathetic listening, because we're going to be fully focused and attentive to them. We're not just hearing them and the words that they're saying or the sounds that they're making. We're listening emphatically of what they want to say to us. So the noun empathy refers to just the ability to comprehend another person's actions or emotions. How do we identify thoughts and emotions that our loved ones are experiencing? And just the capacity to understand what are their reactions, their emotional reactions, and then the awareness of their issues without experiencing, what can be in general, the ability for that person to understand and see where they are coming from. So how can we look back and see where our loved one is coming from? And that takes a lot of intentional and empathetic listening. Steve Covey of 7 Habits for Highly Effective People once said, in empathetic listening, you listen with your ears, but you also, and more importantly, listen with your eyes and with your heart. You listen for feeling, for meaning. You listen for behavior. You use your right brain as well as your left. You sense, you intuit, you feel. You have to open yourself up to be influenced. And perhaps where they are is where you should be, is about this, because empathetic listening is about that connection. It's about deepening and building these relationships and understanding our loved ones in a way that it makes them really feel like we are really with them and listening to them and their needs, and figuring out, not just hearing things that they're saying, but really listening with our hearts and eyes and ears for feeling and meaning. So there's 10 commandments of effective listening. I'll go over. It's just some tips when you're intentionally listening to your loved one. First of all, stop talking. We can't listen properly when we're talking. And so many times caregivers might say, what do you want? I don't understand what you want. Why are you angry? We ask a lot of those questions instead of pausing and stepping back and allowing that person to reveal either through gestures, through their eyes, through their motions. Maybe they're tapping their foot on the floor or a hand on the table. What are they saying to us? So stop talking. And I use the acronym WAIT, why am I talking? Because it'll remind us I need to stop talking and really listen. Consciously focus on the attention of your loved one. And then always put the loved one at ease. Once we're conversing or having a conversation, communicating with our loved one, we need to remove all the distractions, TVs, cell phones, close the door, so that you're really paying attention, intentionally listening empathetically with that person. Pay attention to nonverbal language. Again, the facial expressions, the voice, the body posture. 55% of the message meaning is nonverbal. So we have to look at those nonverbal clues. 38% is indicated by tone of voice. So the tone of your voice, what they're hearing again, and it might be something totally misinterpreted what you're trying to say because of your tone of voice. That's why we want even, gentle tones. And then only 7% of the words that we're conveying are used of the spoken message. So it's very, very important to have those, the nonverbal, the gesture of the eyes, the smiling, the nodding of the head, also your body posture and your tone of voice, to have all those included when you're trying to intentionally listen to what your loved one's trying to communicate with you. Listen for what is not being said. There's clues. What's happening to that loved one? What are they trying to communicate to us that we're getting so frustrated that we can't understand? Maybe ask questions, clarify, re-summarize what the person's saying. The person trying to communicate with us is very fearful of being ridiculed, so they withdraw. The person withdraws and are fearful of communication. So look at cues and how the person is presenting the message to you. What are they doing? What are their actions saying about them? Know exactly what the person is saying. Again, rephrase. I understand you to say this. Is that what you mean? Summarize their message. Try to rephrase what they're saying, and that really validates what they're saying. They know you're trying to understand them. Be aware of tune-out words, and these are really easy phrases that the caregiver gets caught up in about, I don't know what you're saying. Why did you do that? Don't you remember you just had lunch? Why are you angry? Why are you frustrated? Why don't you go to sleep? So the why questions, the person with Alzheimer's or dementia cannot resolve things. So these just cloud the communication and really breaks down effective listening and effective hearing, so to speak. So be aware of those tune-out words. Also concentrate on the hidden meanings. What are the real feelings behind the word? Sometimes your loved one might be suffering maybe a little depression for the law. There's a void in his or her life, or maybe your loved one is hungry or worried. And so what are the hidden emotional meanings behind the words that they're trying to tell us? And again, you use your tone of voice. What can it mean by the tone of their voice? Again, there's that words again, be patient. Yes, we have to give that person time to process what they're trying to tell us. And then whatever we're trying to express to them, they have to have, time to process in their mind. So be patient. Try to give them time to get the full message. And it's so easy to be frustrated, to want to finish their sentences, to just give up. But again, walk in that person's shoes. Also, when our emotions are high, especially in a behavioral expression, when our loved one can't communicate to us fully of what they need, they get very frustrated. The caregiver gets very frustrated. And so emotions run very high. So hold on to that frustration. That's where we want to take a time out again. Don't argue because you'll always lose. So take a time out, slow down, and just revisit it if you need to, count to 10 and go pause and go back to it. And then again, use that empathy with effective listening. Try to walk in that person's shoes. What is hurting that person? How can I heal those hurts and build those bridges to really connect relationship with that person? It builds trust with that person, that we're trying to communicate with them and effective listening to what they want to say. And it opens doors to greater communication. And also, the more you know, the better to go, because the more you know about the history and what they're trying to communicate, it become kind of routine. Oh, my loved one needs this because that's the way he or she was communicating yesterday, and they needed some water or whatever. And so that's what I know that my loved one needs. And it also helps with the self-esteem of the person that's affected. So what are some examples of empathetic responses? How can we really use empathy in getting into the world of our loved ones with the disease? First, we always want to acknowledge their pain. The best thing you can do is acknowledge how that person feels, how that loved one feels. When you connect, and this is with anyone, when you connect with someone else's struggle, then, they feel supported and validated. And so use phrases like, I'm sorry you're going through this. I hate that this happened. This must be so hard for you. Or I can see how this would be difficult. You're acknowledging their pain, you're validating their feelings, and you're also building a relationship of trust and validation with the loved one that you're communicating with. They'll be reassured because you're on their level and acknowledging their pain. Share how you feel. Sometimes silence, it's just being with the person and holding that hand, is getting into their world. I don't know what to say. My heart hurts for you. I'm really sad that you're sad. It's okay to admit that you don't know what to say. And sometimes when your loved one is really out of sorts and having a bad day, just be present with them. But don't diminish the other person's experience by any means. But saying, oh, it'll all work out is not going to really help them. It kind of diminishes it. But saying things like, it really makes me feel sad, you're getting on their level, and it doesn't diminish their feelings about whatever they're experiencing. Always show gratitude that person opened up. They're adults, and so give them the respect and dignity. Thank you for sharing that with me. Thank you. I really appreciate you confided in me and told me that. It really must be hard to talk about. Thank you for opening up to me. I miss my mom. I want to go home. I miss my mom. I want to go home. Oh, thank you for sharing that with me. Tell me about your mom. It must be really hard for you to talk about her. You must miss her. So when you show gratitude with that person and again, share those feelings with them, it opens up like a safe place for them. And so they're in this area where they feel safe and not intimidated, and they feel comfortable with you. And so it builds up that trust and self-esteem with that person. Always show interest, always going through difficulties. Again, when you're put in the shoes of that person that's suffering the memory impairment, it's terribly isolating and lonely. So showing interest and having someone share those feelings with builds a connection and relationship. They want someone that's really interested in their story, and they understand how they're feeling. Not someone to pacify them, but somebody to really show interest. How are you feeling about this? I want to make sure I understand. What I'm hearing today is that you're feeling that you miss your mother. Is that right? Or is there anything else you'd like to share with me? Really show interest and connect. And that, again, builds the trust and self-esteem and makes them really open to sharing things with you. Be encouraging. I always like to give positive affirmation comments when back and forth conversation with a loved one with Alzheimer's. Most people just want an encouraging word, holding their hand. You are brave, you are strong, you are talented. Anything that can encourage them or make them feel better about themselves. You matter. In the world of such isolation and loneliness, telling someone with a disease, you matter. You matter to me. I'm in your corner. I love you. I'm here for you. Those kind of words can really, really go a long way in building that relationship with the other one and helping them open up and communicate with with the loved ones. You won't be able to fix the problem. Look on the bright side, things will be better. That just pacifies the person. Really get, be beside that person in their pain, and be mindful of how you approach it. Again, don't diminish what they're feeling. Share what you admire about that person. If it needs to be redirected, share some particular talents of that person, do an activity, but always be encouraging and make that person feel worthy. And that gives them their sense of quality of life and well-being. Always be supportive. You're safe with me. How can I help you? What do you need right now? I'm happy to listen anytime. I would like to do this for you. What would you like to do? The person with Alzheimer's needs that reassurance of safety. Actions speak louder than words. So do something with an action. Hold their hand, get up and get them some coffee, listen to music, give a hug, do something with action. It always helps the person feel loved and supported. So I'll tell you a little story about Nana. She is 84 years old, and she has dementia with periodic episodes of paranoia. Her son recently removed her car from the driveway at her home because she was no longer able to drive, safely. And she's been resentful of this action ever since. Well, one day, Nana's teenage grandson, Liam, comes to visit her, and Nana becomes very upset and accusatory, telling Liam that he took her car, that she wanted it back immediately. Liam is very uncomfortable with the exchange and began, trying to talk to her and reason her, said that she did, that he wasn't old enough to have a driver's license, couldn't drive her car. She became, grew angry or frustrated that Liam would not get her car. And his response to her was, Nana, remember, you have some memory problems and you can no longer drive. Dad sold your car a few weeks ago. So can you imagine 84-year-old adult woman, and she, in her mind, she can still drive. And she has this teenage son probably reminds her of her son that took the car. And so this teenager is telling an adult, you have memory problems, you can no longer drive, we sold the car. Well, as an adult, I'm sure Nana probably felt, well, what would have been was that an empathetic response to his Nana? Would it be more appropriate? What would be more appropriate for Liam to answer Nana in this situation? Well, of course, a teenager is trying to help the situation and did only what, told her truthfully. But if you go through the steps of these empathetic listening, maybe the conversation would have gone a little better and eased Nana's frustrations and angry over getting her car. It takes a lot of patience and perseverance, of course, to develop these skills. So what if he would have acknowledged Nana first? I'm sorry, your car is gone, Nana. That must be difficult for you. So, Liam could have said that to her to kind of diffuse the situation of her getting, of her anger getting more angrier, so to speak. Then share her pain. Yeah, Nana, if somebody took my car, my heart hurts for you. But telling her that she had a memory impairment, she can't resolve that, and that just made her more frustrated. Show gratitude that she trusted. Nana, this must be really hard to talk about. Thanks for opening up to me about your car. And then show interest and validate. What I'm hearing you say is that you're feeling angry that your car is gone. Is that right? Validate. And then, yes, I'm angry my car is gone. I want to go to the store. Now, where is it or whatever? And then he can be encouraging. I'm in your corner, Nana. I love you. I'm here for you. Be supportive. What do you need right now, Nana? Can I make some tea? Let's talk about it, or let's go feed the dog, Boo-Boo. So those he kind of redirects. Now, of course, a young person might not think of all these, but as an adult or another adult, if you're having this kind of situation and go through these steps, it can diffuse the situation and make her less frustrated and angry about the car, and also forget about the car for the time being and her frustrations that it's not in the driveway. She cannot resolve why she cannot drive anymore. So none of that's going to work. We have to acknowledge her feelings, get behind her emotions. Again, step into her shoes. How would you feel if your car was taken away from you. It's also too, it's all about Nana's independence. That car was taken away from her, and that was her last little bit of independence. So she's very sad about that. She's very frustrated about that. And so she needs, acknowledgement. She needs a supportive person there to listen to. And then actions, maybe he went to go feed her little dog or get some tea for them, and they could sit down and talk further. So empathetic listening is really the key to fostering self-esteem in people with dementia. And it's very important to know everything is relational. Every action has meaning. When they forget something, don't point it out. Pointing out that they forgot, just like Liam tried to do with his mother, is not going to get the problem resolved. It's only going to heighten the situation. Also, you can identify with the loved one by saying, oh, that's happened to me before. I'm sure you'll come back to it later. I know one time when I was talking with a loved one with Alzheimer's, he got very frustrated and kept, moving his hands, and because I can't, I've got this brain thing. And so I realized that that's okay. We'll come back to it later. We'll pick up later. I forget sometimes too. So again, get into their world and make sure, it's building a healthy self-esteem with them. And important, again, not to always, well, you forgot this, or do you remember that? But always say something maybe that to spark their remembrance, or just go on and move to another topic. So again, patience, perseverance, embrace the possibilities. Patience, again, slow down, think, no, not those negative self-talks. Make that choice to be patient. Choose what you're going to have power over, and then surrender everything that you cannot control. Persevere, keep that mantra, just keep going, accept change, be positive, laugh a lot, embrace the unpredictability, focus on things that bring you joy, and don't let the past rule the present. Look at the possibilities, the self-discoveries, look at things differently, be the empathetic listener, discover. Robin Moore is a national or international speaker. She lives in Australia, and she was a caregiver for her mother, who had Alzheimer's. And she and her mother went to her brother's wedding, and she went to get her at the reception. She was sitting with her mother, and she went to get her mother some refreshments. And when she came back, her mother said, oh, looked at her dress, and she says, this is a beautiful dress, Robin. What are we doing? And Robin says, well, Mom, Johnny got married today, and you're at the wedding. And she goes, oh, Johnny got married today? And she said, yes. And she goes, well, that's wonderful. I'd like to go wish them the best. And Robin says, sure, let's eat a little bit, and then we'll go tell them congratulations. 5 minutes later, as she's eating her refreshments, the mother looks up again and sees her sequin dress, and she says, why am I dressed up? And Robin says, Mother, you're at a wedding. Johnny got married today. And she goes, Johnny got married today? And she says, yes, he married a lovely lady named Linda. So each time her mother noticed that she was dressed up, but she didn't know why she was, Robin would tell her some other thing about the wedding, either the name of the bride, or the type of music, or the band, or that we would go wish the couple a greeting. So Robin said, with her experience with her mother, that everything was the first time. Everything when she communicated with her mother, even through the repetitious, she tried to listen for the first time and look at it different. And so there's where she found a self-discovery. So, always remember that you're a conduit for joy with your loved one, that y'all can be conduits for each other, for joy for each other, to promote well-being and quality of life. And remember to give yourself that applause every day, because, again, you always want to look forward. Don't let the past rule the present. And that's, where they are is where you should be, how you do it. So thank you. Are there any questions or comments today?
Thank you, Dana. That was a wonderful presentation. We do have one comment that's come in so far from Miss Betsy. She says, my grandpa always told me that God made us with 2 ears and 1 mouth so we can listen twice as much as we speak. She said it's something that stayed with her whole life. And
That's
then
very true. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing.
And we did have a question about what does WAIT stand for, but we got an answer for that. Why am I talking? And then so far, we just have a lot of other positive feedback comments. We can give everybody a couple minutes in case somebody has any questions that come in.
Okay.
And Dana, I'll be sure to pass on your website and your email as well in case anybody has
That's
any
fine.
additional questions.
Yeah, some of y'all might think about questions later and not remember them. You can email me.
Awesome. Thank you, Dana. We're getting lots of good comments in. We got a question. Will this be available later to watch? Yes, I will be sure to email the recording out this afternoon. We did get a question. Any tips for how to be positive when your loved one has an episode in public?
You know, kind of when you look at child development too, and your 2-year-old having a temper tantrum, what'd you do with your 2-year-old? You kind of ignored it and walked on. I'm not saying ignore your loved one by any means, especially with safety issues. But, you know, I look at it as we can't worry about what other people think. The caregiver is going through a journey unmatched by anyone. And so I know in difficult situations when the person does act out in public, we don't want to try to diffuse the situation. I've been that many times where someone's tried to grab their arm and escort them out of a public place or whatever. That can only antagonize and escalate the situation. And so we want to use some of the tips I've said today about the empathetic listening. You know, let's sit here or just pause and time out. Maybe there's a chair you could sit in or someplace in the area where you could diffuse or go to a quiet place where they can settle down. And not cause such a big scene where you're at. Probably the cause of it is if, you know, they're in a place, of course, they're disoriented, especially if it's a public place, a lot of things going on, too many people around them. And so they're very disoriented. So taking them to someplace quieter without all the distractions, sometimes that diffuses the situation.
Thanks, Dana. We also got a comment for you that says, thanks for covering FTD in your advocate column this week. It will help me to explain my loved one's disease to my family.
Yeah, and it's come to the forefront because of Bruce Willis. So I'm glad more people are learning more about it.
Absolutely. Well, Dana, I think that's all the questions. Oh, we got another question. Let's see. What would you do if other people who help in caregiving are not patient with your loved one?
I would have a little education meeting with them on the side. I would really have a conversation with them opposite, you know, your loved one's presence and say, just be honest. This is where my loved one is. These are the things that you need to do. The case study I gave you is a true story of what my sister's dealing with. And so, you know, I tell her plainly too about patients and everything, and with her mother-in-law and things that are going on. So you have to have an honest conversation, especially with the relatives and friends around that loved one, and let them know what that loved one is experiencing and how important it is for everybody to get on the same page where they can make sure that person has a quality of life and has a well-being that they deserve. And so I would be honest and upfront and just in a very tactful and empathetic way say, these are some of the things that you can do that would bring a positive outcome with the loved one, you know.
Awesome. Thank you, Dana. That concludes the questions that we have in the chat box, but I've saved all the different kind comments, and I'll be sure to send all those to you as well. But thank you, Dana, for such a wonderful presentation, and thank you to everyone who joined us today.
Great. Thank y'all. Enjoy being with y'all.